Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Toronto Blue Jays offseason has officially transformed from calculated ambition into absolute chaos, and what's unfolding right now might be the wildest free agent drama Major League Baseball has seen in years. We're talking about a franchise that's teetering on the edge of either historic triumph or catastrophic failure, with Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette at the center of a swirling vortex of rumors, leverage plays, and backroom dealings that would make a Hollywood screenwriter blush. Let's cut through the noise and get straight to the explosive revelation that dropped like a bomb. Ken Rosenthal, one of baseball's most respected insiders, just went on record saying Toronto is the frontrunner for Kyle Tucker. Not in the mix, not showing interest, the leader. When Rosenthal speaks, general managers listen, and when he singles out one team as the favorite, you better believe something significant is happening behind closed doors. This isn't some random Twitter speculation or wishful thinking from desperate fans refreshing their phones at 3 a.m. This is legitimate, sourced reporting from someone who's built a career on accuracy. But here's where things get absolutely insane. The Blue Jays aren't just casually interested in Tucker. According to multiple industry sources reported by Mark Feinsand, Toronto is being tabbed as Tucker's likely destination by people actually embedded in the baseball operations world. One source literally said that after signing Kazuma Okamoto and extending Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the Jays sent a clear message that they're going all in to win. Signing Dylan Cease was impressive, sure, but adding Tucker would cap off what insiders are calling a pretty remarkable 12-month transformation for this franchise. We're watching a team that's been stuck in mediocrity trying to catapult itself into legitimate World Series contention through sheer force of spending and strategic maneuvering. The evidence keeps piling up. Robert Murray reported just days ago that Tucker actually wants to play for the Blue Jays. Ken Rosenthal doubled down on his reporting. These aren't reporters known for throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. They're professionals with reputations to protect, and they're all singing the same tune. Sure, there's always a chance Tucker signs elsewhere, and everyone says the Jays were used as leverage, but this feels different. This feels real. The interest is mutual, the conversations are ongoing, and Toronto's front office is clearly making Tucker their top priority. Of course, nothing in baseball can ever be straightforward. Enter the New York Mets, stage left, with Steve Cohen's bottomless wallet and a sudden reported interest in Tucker that's making everyone's head spin. John Heyman came out late last night saying the Mets are very much in the mix, but still face stiff competition. Ben Nicholson-Smith has been suggesting over the past week that the Mets might have emerged as an even likelier destination than Toronto for Tucker long term, though his reporting has shifted slightly since then. This reeks of classic leverage tactics. Think about it logically. If Tucker isn't getting the money he wants, and reports suggest the Jays aren't willing to go to $400 million, what's the most effective way to squeeze more money out of Toronto? Leak to a prominent reporter that the Mets are seriously interested. Nothing motivates a negotiation like competition from a team with unlimited resources. Cody Grossman, another baseball insider, literally said this situation smells like leverage. And he's absolutely right. The Tucker camp is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. They're creating the perception of a bidding war to drive up the price, and honestly, it's a brilliant strategy. The Mets probably have some level of interest because they're the Mets, and Steve Cohen collects all-stars like some people collect baseball cards. But the timing of these reports coinciding with contract negotiations screams manufactured pressure. Ken Rosenthal added another crucial piece to this puzzle when he noted that the Mets can't rely on a short-term, high-average annual value deal if they want a realistic chance at signing Tucker. The market exists for longer-term contracts, and that's the position Tucker finds himself in. This is actually fantastic news for Toronto because the Blue Jays are reportedly willing to go longer-term, which plays directly into their strengths. They're building for sustained contention, not a quick championship window. So committing to Tucker for 8 or 9 years makes more strategic sense for them than it does for a team like the Mets, who are in win-now mode. The situation is evolving rapidly, and despite the circular nature of the reporting where we're hearing the same names and same teams on repeat like some bizarre baseball version of Groundhog Day, things are genuinely starting to reach a critical point. Decisions are coming, contracts will be signed, the off-season circus can't continue indefinitely, and with spring training approaching, players and teams need to finalize their situations. But wait, because this story is about to get even crazier. While everyone's focused on Tucker, there's a Bo Bichette bomb that just exploded and completely changes the dynamics of Toronto's off-season calculus. Yesterday, John Heyman reported that Bichette is looking for somewhere in the ballpark of $300 million. $300 million. We don't know the term, but let's assume it's over 10 years, which would still make it a massive commitment for a shortstop with Bichette's injury history and defensive limitations. Here's where it gets wild. The Philadelphia Phillies have officially scheduled a meeting with Bo Bichette, and according to sources, they've done extensive work on the various roster ripple effects that signing him would require. This isn't casual interest. They're meeting via video conference in the coming days, and their interest is being described as legitimate. If this results in a deal, the Phillies would need to move on from JT Realmuto and Alec Boehm, completely restructuring their infield in the process. The connection to Philadelphia makes perfect sense when you consider one crucial detail. Don Mattingly recently joined the Phillies after leaving the Blue Jays, and Bo Bichette had an incredibly close relationship with Mattingly during their time together in Toronto. That personal connection cannot be understated. Players follow coaches they trust and respect, and if Mattingly is in Bichette's ear saying Philadelphia is the right place for him, that carries enormous weight. Bill Madden, who has sources throughout baseball, tweeted that the Phillies are currently the favorite to sign Bichette and that Mattingly wants to bring Bichette along as Toronto tries to get stronger. The strong mutual interest could result in a deal when they meet next week, and if it happens, Philadelphia will need to trade Boehm to make the money and roster space work. One source even added that hopefully this pushes the Blue Jays to get a deal done with Tucker soon, which reveals the underlying strategy everyone's operating under. Once Bichette signs somewhere, Tucker's market will accelerate rapidly. This is where things get absolutely critical for Toronto. Losing Bichette stings, no question about it. He's been with the organization since he was drafted. He's a fan favorite, and on his best days, he's an electric player who can change games with his bat and his speed. But here's the cold, hard reality. Losing Bichette to Philadelphia is infinitely better than losing him to the New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox, or any other American League East rival. If he's going to leave, sending him to the National League where the Blue Jays won't face him 19 times a season is the best-case scenario. However, and this is crucial, if Toronto loses Bichette and then also loses Tucker, this suddenly transforms from a solid offseason into a legitimate disaster. Sure, Ross Atkins has done good work so far. Signing Kazuma Okamoto was a smart move. Extending Guerrero was essential. Adding Dylan Cease gives them another frontline starter. But none of that matters if they miss out on both of their primary offensive targets. The roster is good, not great. It's competitive, not championship caliber. They cannot afford to be done making moves at this point in the offseason. The pressure is mounting with each passing day. That mounting pressure is probably why we're seeing these leverage games accelerate. The Tucker camp knows Toronto is desperate to add another impact bat. They know the Bichette situation creates urgency. They know the Blue Jays have spent the past year telling their fan base and their existing players that they're serious about contending. All of that creates an environment where Toronto has very little negotiating leverage, and Tucker's representation is exploiting that reality masterfully. The Mets rumors, whether legitimate or manufactured, serve a specific purpose. They keep Toronto honest. They prevent the Blue Jays from lowballing Tucker or dragging negotiations out indefinitely. They create the perception of competition, even if the competition isn't as serious as reported. And if the Mets are genuinely interested, which they very well might be given Steve Cohen's proven willingness to spend aggressively, then Toronto has to move quickly or risk losing their top target to a team with significantly deeper pockets. Ken Rosenthal's comment about the Mets needing to commit long-term if they want Tucker is revealing because it exposes the fundamental difference between how these teams operate. The Mets have been willing to do short-term mega deals that maximize average annual value while minimizing long-term risk. It's how they've built their roster under Cohen's ownership. But Tucker isn't Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander at the end of their careers looking for one last massive payday. He's 28 years old, entering his prime, and he wants security. He wants the long-term deal that sets up his family for generations. You know, that reality plays directly into Toronto's favor because they're willing to commit the years, even if they're not willing to match the absolute highest possible average annual value. The Blue Jays reportedly haven't increased their efforts to pursue Bichette, which strongly suggests they know something the public doesn't. Either they've been told directly that Bichette is leaning toward Philadelphia, or their internal evaluation determined that paying $300 million for a shortstop with his profile doesn't make baseball sense. Either way, their focus has clearly shifted almost entirely to Tucker, and that's where they're concentrating their resources and energy. What happens next is genuinely uncertain, and that's what makes this so compelling. If the Mets are serious about Tucker and willing to go longer term, they have the financial advantage. But if Tucker genuinely wants to play in Toronto, if he likes the idea of teaming up with Guerrero and being the centerpiece of a rising contender, if he prefers the AL East stage to the NL East, then money might not be the only factor. Players aren't always purely mercenary. Sometimes fit matters. Sometimes organizational vision matters. Sometimes the pitch from the front office and the roster around you matters more than the extra $20 million spread across 8 years. The next few days and weeks will be absolutely critical. Bichette's meeting with Philadelphia could accelerate everything. If he signs there quickly, which some insiders believe is possible given the mutual interest and the Mattingly connection, then Tucker's market immediately heats up. Teams won't want to miss out on the last premium position player available, and that could force Toronto to either raise their offer or risk losing him to a team willing to go higher on average annual value. There are also secondary consequences to consider. The Blue Jays recently avoided arbitration with several players, including Ernie Clement and Dalton Varsho, which means those salaries are locked in and won't create surprise budget complications. However, they didn't settle with Eric Lauer, which means they're heading to an arbitration hearing where they'll need to come up with a fair number for a player who didn't even appear in MLB the year before last and then dominated in a weird role last season. That's tricky to evaluate and could create some tension, but it's a minor issue compared to the Tucker and Bichette situations. The bigger picture here is that Toronto is operating in uncharted territory for their franchise. They're attempting to spend like a major market team while navigating the complications of a Canadian market, fluctuating exchange rates, and ownership that historically hasn't been willing to blow past luxury tax thresholds. And they're trying to convince players that Toronto is a destination, not a stopover. They're trying to build a championship contender through aggressive spending and smart trades rather than patient development and hoping prospects pan out. It's a massive gamble, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If they land Tucker and successfully pivot from losing Bichette, they'll have legitimately scary lineup that could compete with anybody in baseball. Guerrero, Tucker, Springer when healthy, Varsho, and whatever other pieces they add would give them one of the best offenses in the American League. Combined with their improved starting rotation, they'd be legitimate World Series contenders. But if they miss on both Tucker and Bichette, if they end up spending the money on secondary options and filling out the roster with good but not great players, then this entire year of hype and expectations and promises to the fan base will feel hollow. They'll still probably be competitive enough to fight for a wild card spot, but they won't be the kind of team that strikes fear into opponents during a playoff series. They'll be good, not great, and in baseball, good doesn't win championships. The other teams circling these situations are watching carefully. If Toronto stumbles, if they show hesitation or inability to close deals with premium players, other front offices will take note. It'll make future free agents wonder if the Blue Jays can actually follow through on their promises. It'll make agents question whether Toronto should be taken seriously as a landing spot for their elite clients. The ripple effects of failure here extend far beyond just this offseason. Meanwhile, fans are doing their part, absolutely flooding Kyle Tucker's social media with comments and pleas to come to Toronto. It's both endearing and slightly unhinged, which perfectly captures the energy of modern sports fandom. Players definitely notice this stuff, And while it probably doesn't swing a decision involving hundreds of millions of dollars, it does create an atmosphere and a sense of how passionate the fan base is about winning. That matters to some players more than others. Ross Atkins has been asked about the Tucker pursuit repeatedly, and he's played it cool publicly while clearly working the phones aggressively behind the scenes. That's the right approach. You don't want to seem desperate even when you absolutely are desperate, because desperation kills leverage in negotiations. But Atkins also knows the clock is ticking, and at some point, playing it cool needs to transform into making your best offer and forcing a decision. The fact that Ken Rosenthal is doubling down on Toronto being the leader is significant, because he doesn't do that unless he's hearing it from multiple credible sources. His reputation is built on accuracy, not being first. And when he stakes a claim like this, it means something substantial is happening. Whether that translates to Tucker actually signing in Toronto remains to be seen. But the smoke is becoming thick enough that there's almost certainly fire somewhere in this situation. As this all plays out, remember that baseball negotiations are fundamentally about leverage, information advantages, and strategic maneuvering. Everything you read in public is filtered through multiple agendas. Player agents leak information to create pressure on teams. Teams leak information to manage fan expectations or influence other negotiations. Reporters sometimes get played by their sources, who are feeding them information for strategic purposes. It's a complex ecosystem where truth is often obscured by layers of calculated information warfare. But through all the noise and speculation and leverage plays and manufactured drama, a few things are becoming clear. Toronto desperately wants Kyle Tucker and is willing to pay significantly to get him. Bo Bichette's market is developing, with Philadelphia as the apparent frontrunner. The next 2 weeks will likely determine the trajectory of multiple franchises for the next decade, and Blue Jays fans are about to find out whether their front office can actually deliver on all the promises they've been making about being serious contenders. This is chaos. This is beautiful, stressful, completely unhinged baseball chaos, and we're all along for the ride. Buckle up, because the resolution is coming soon, and it's going to be either absolutely glorious or crushingly disappointing, with very little middle ground between those extremes. The Blue Jays are swinging for the fences, and we're about to find out if they connect or strike out swinging. Either way, it's going to be one hell of a show. What do you think happens next? Is Tucker signing in Toronto, or are we watching an elaborate leverage play that ends with him in a Mets uniform? Does Bichette end up in Philadelphia, or could Toronto make a last-minute push to keep their homegrown star? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Smash that like button if you're as obsessed with this drama as I am, and subscribe to stay updated on every twist and turn as this wild offseason continues to unfold. The next big move could drop at any moment, and you don't want to miss it when it does. This is baseball at its most dramatic, and we're witnessing history being made one insane rumor at a time.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.